So what parts of yourself did you have to accept?
That I did not have self-worth.
That's deep.
No matter how beautiful I was, no matter how many modeling jobs I booked or commercials, or no matter how many times people called me beautiful, if I didn't see that, if I didn't know my internal beauty and my outwards beauty and how powerful and beautiful I really was, it didn't matter what everybody else said. I am your host, your sister, Letitia Roll, and this mini-series features Crystal Streets, navigating toxic relationships and how to get back to self. Because, girl, we got this. What up, sis?
What's good?
Back with my sister, Crystal Street.
We're back.
I am so excited for this episode today. It's all about the death and rebirth. As you know, if you watched the last episode, we discussed my death.
Yes.
Her death.
My death multiple times.
And now we're going to get into it even deeper and how we rebirth ourselves as women, as friends, as mothers.
How you navigate death, how you become less of a participant and more of an observer.
Yes. And I know some of y'all are probably like thinking, what do you mean death?
Yes, what do you mean?
What's happening? If you haven't already listened to Crystal and I podcast on last season, go back right now, press pause, go back and watch our episode on season 4, because it is so powerful, and you get into the idea of how many deaths you've had in this lifetime. And I think it was so powerful. And this is actually why we're doing the mini series between you and I, because that moment reached so many women.
That's it.
And so many women understood, like, oh, this part of me is shedding, this part of me is dying, and it's okay. You gave so many women permission to accept that part.
Yes. I mean, death is not the end and birth is not the beginning. And I view my process of death and rebirth as ending of an old version of how you were, how you went, who you were, and the birth of a new.
Yes.
It's closing out cycles, identities, cycles. It's a literal, like, you are birthing into a new version of yourself. And death is scary. The word death, people fear death. But I look at death in a different way. It doesn't have to be scary.
Yes.
I even started to think about, even with my kids, like explaining to them that everything is temporary. Everyone around you is going to die.
Yes.
Right? I want to prepare you for that. Everyone is going to die.
Everyone.
Right? And even like, I can say it's as death is not as literal, but like the death and rebirth we're discussing is like going through a complete metamorphosis of self, where you die, like a tower moment happens, something happens in your life, you experience a near death experience or a rock bottom, death, something happens to you and you are rocked to your core.
Yes.
Like the rug is pulled from under you. You have to make decisions and, life-changing decisions, or something life-changing happens to you and you literally die, right? You die.
It's the death and the rebirth.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, because I talked about my death a lot. I've died a million times and I feel like I'm a pro at dying at this point. But you, like, I was so proud of like watching your latest deaths and rebirths, like, and you honoring that instead of like, and talking about it. Because in the past you wouldn't talk about it.
Yes.
Right? So where are you now in your death and rebirth process, and how do you navigate that?
So we talked about this a lot in the last episode, leaving unhealthy spaces, unhealthy relationship, things that no longer served you.
Yes.
With that comes death.
Yes.
With that becomes a death of an old version of me. So when I left that relationship, we can start there.
Yeah.
When the Saturn return, as we discussed in the last episode, happened, I was like, who am I? Because I didn't know who I was. I was so confused because no one ever saw me in that world that I was in. No one knew who I was.
Exactly.
I masked, I acted, and I played a role.
Or you are identified through someone else.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a lot of us do in this life. Because we never have our own sovereign. We never start thinking for ourselves. We never have that moment of death.
Yeah.
when I had a moment of death, when I chose to choose myself, when I chose to rediscover who I was, to find myself, to love myself, that's when I knew, oh, you're dying.
Yeah.
Old Letitia, she has to go.
Yeah.
If you want to step into this new version of you,
yes.
if you want to be able to have a podcast to help and share women's stories and give women a voice and a platform to create a safe space so we can all relate and grow, you got to die.
Yeah.
And you got to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And you have to create a safe space for yourself before you create a safe space for anybody else.
And you have to sometimes face the ugliest parts of yourself.
And I did.
Right? Shadow work. That's shadow work.
Yeah.
Shadow work is the most embarrassing parts of you that you have rejected, suppressed, shamed, that still sit there that you have not looked at, that you have not accepted. And when you can accept both the light and the dark, because we have made up of dark and light energy. We've made up of masculine and feminine energy.
Yes, we are.
The yin and the yang. And so when we can accept all parts of ourselves, that's when we can come into true authenticity.
Yes.
So what parts of yourself did you have to accept?
That I did not have self-worth.
It's deep.
No matter how beautiful I was, no matter how many modeling jobs I booked or commercials, or no matter how many times people called me beautiful, if I didn't see that, if I didn't know my internal beauty and my outwards beauty and how powerful and beautiful I really was, it didn't matter what anybody else said. So I had to recognize my self-worth. And what helped me get there was hypnotherapy. So in hypnotherapy, I was able to go back to my youngest part of me that recognized I was not worthy.
Yeah.
And I'll share it in depth. For me, I learned at a very young age, when I was born, my father is Black and Puerto Rican, my mother's white. And my grandparents, my grandfather specifically, wasn't okay with that. My dad came from a different circumstances. He was actually just getting out of jail.
Wow.
My dad just got out of jail. My mom was writing him love letters in jail.
That's real.
And now she's pregnant.
Yeah.
So my grandpa was kind of
like, wow,
not okay with it.
Yeah.
And also like he had some form of racism still in his body because of how he was raised. He's not a racist. He just didn't know any better. So at that time, when I was born, I was the first daughter. First granddaughter. And my grandmother was with my mom when she gave birth to me. Now, mind you, my mother was 17. So I'm sure I had a very, and I'm not sure, I know. I had a really hard birth.
I'm sure.
A 17-year-old who had big dreams, very smart woman, had goals and dreams. And now I'm becoming into this world.
Yeah.
She had a child, having a child. And my grandmother was like, your grandfather doesn't want to be here, to my mom. And my mom was like, what are you talking about? And my grandmother made it a point to place me in my grandfather's hands and told him, you will accept this child.
Wow.
And you're going to love her.
Wow.
And if anybody knows, I was his favorite.
Wow.
But that was the first part of my unworthiness, was coming out of the womb and not feeling accepted. And I had to go. Hypnotherapy is that beautiful space where you go back in time and you go back to that space as an observer.
Yes.
And you change that scenario.
You reprogram
You reprogram it as my grandfather being so excited to see me, being in the birthing room, loving me.
Yes.
But I learned that was my first sense of unworthiness.
That's beautiful. And the fact that you were able to uncover that through hypnotherapy. And hypnotherapy is one of the modalities I started with too. And I just want to say, like, to give a little science behind it, between the ages of 0 and 7 is when our belief systems are formed.
Yes.
Our strongest belief systems, the belief systems that loop over and over again in our subconscious. So that's why you see, like, when people are triggered as adults, it's not really what they're triggered with now. It really goes back to the root. And I always say, you have to go back to the root.
Yes.
And so what you did was a beautiful part of this journey, but the most essential part was going back to the root, because it doesn't matter if you don't go back to the root. The same situation, the same scenario, the same man, the same relationship, it will keep happening over and over and over again. Until you reclaim that memory.
Yes.
So what you did was so powerful. And it's similar to my journey. I started with hypnotherapy as well. And that's when I was able to uncover, I can say, my first hit of unworthiness, because mine was too. I think it was like more so about learning what love was. Because my abuser was in my family. The way that I learned what love was through control and manipulation and abuse. So, and then I was abandoned at like 11 by my biological father. And that was another traumatic memory, because it was like, it was over money. And so I didn't feel worthy of $100, which meant like later on in life, if someone wasn't, even though I had my own, if someone wasn't spending money on me, I wasn't worthy of love.
Yes.
Even though I had my own.
I'm right.
It
there
made
with you
no
on this.
sense,
Yep.
right? But it was because that original man, the man that shows us, our fathers are here to show us the ultimate self-love, to show us how we should be treated by a man. And if that is absent, or they show us the opposite, we go to look to find that in partners. So we're still this unhealed little girl looking to get that moment, that healed, that unmet need healed.
Yes.
And we search for it again and again and again in different partners. So I feel you, and I'm proud of you, because that is deep work.
Yeah. And that was my first death, when I was like, no, you are worthy. But then as my journey continued, there was so many other moments of unworthiness that I felt. And I had to realize that she has to die.
Yes.
The worthy me has to arrive. But I had to go through the unworthiness of that situation with my grandfather.
Yeah.
I had to go, I was an athlete. So being an athlete, a lot of athletes can relate of not being enough.
Yeah.
Right? I perform. That's how I'm enough.
Right.
If my performance is great, if I'm winning games, if my dad's there cheering for me, he's not bitching at me after the game, if my coaches aren't spitting in my face, because that's a woman.
What?
I don't think we talk about this enough.
Spitting in your face?
Oh, man. I had basketball coaches growing up that were so toxic. I laugh, but it's so important that your kids are being coached by emotionally intelligent people. Like, I had basketball coaches literally spitting in our face, like yelling at us like crazy in high school, because it was we were a small town, it was very competitive, but that doesn't justify how we were treated as women, right? So we were all in this space of masculine toxicity because the way these men like coached us.
Yeah.
And like we thought that was okay, because every small town did that. Like we had to win. Yeah. Right. So I thought that was normal. Him breaking the clipboard, him yelling at us, him like literally pointing somebody out, mushing one of the girls. Like I was like, that's not me.
No.
That's unworthy her.
No. Oh my god.
But a lot of athletes, a lot of women have dealt with that. It wasn't until high school when I had a woman coach. Sherry Levins changed my life. And I never had another coach like that as an athlete, where I was like, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel.
Right. But isn't it crazy how you can often relate that to like when you finally get into a healthy relationship?
Yes.
And you're like, oh,
yes,
this is how it's supposed to feel.
Yes.
And I just want to say, like, I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. Like,
thank you.
That was, I mean, very traumatic.
Yeah, and a lot of women can relate to this as athletes, because we are already in our masculine as athletes. We are already like lifting. Like I was competitive. I wanted to win. I had that adrenaline in me every day. I had that beautiful fight. Being an athlete has taught me about life, the ebb and flow, how to win, how to lose, how to fail, and it was a gift.
But can you also agree that maybe being an athlete too can push you past your limits or push you past your boundaries? Or
suck it up. Boundaries. Keep going. Suck it up. What you mean? Get up. You're fine. Get up. No, actually, I wasn't fine.
Right.
100%. I think that's a big part in the athletic world that we don't talk enough about, to be honest. Because no, you need to look at that. Yeah. You need to get up and feel that pain. You can't just keep going like it never happened.
No, it's a very unhealthy way of dealing with pain.
Yes. And that was another death. I had to let that unworthiness, that not feeling enough.
Yeah.
Not feeling enough is always a big thing that showed up as an adult for me.
Yeah.
Especially in relationships.
Yeah.
Especially in that past relationship.
Yeah.
Even in friendships, I had to feel like I was enough.
Yeah.
So that was a death of the old me.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
You are enough.
You are.
And you do not have to allow people to talk to you any certain way because that's what you think coaches do. You don't have to allow people to mistreat you, misguide you, disrespect you. So because of that part of my life, I also realized I was attracted to a controlling personality. I was attracted to a coaching mentality because that was love. I love my coaches.
Exactly.
I love my dad, but they were hard and not safe spaces for us to grow up in.
Available.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see how in my life too, like dealing with very manipulative, controlling masculine energy at a very early age. Like I basically attracted the same exact person over and over and over again. And it was like the more that I would blossom, the more people would try to control me. And the more that I felt boxed in. It was like if I was in a relationship, I would feel like, oh my gosh, like boxed in.
And that's not what it's supposed to be.
And then that's when I learned too about attachment styles. And I was like, when I learned, there's pretty much 3 attachment styles. Avoidant.
Yeah.
Which is me.
Avoidant club. I'm changing that.
Yes.
We changed it. We are the men.
We are secure.
Yes.
We have healed. We are
still working on it.
Yes.
I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
There's still parts of me that are avoidant.
No, I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you.
I can own that.
Yeah.
There are still parts of me that I'm working on to be secure.
Especially if you get into a relationship with someone who is anxious.
Yeah.
Because that can like trigger your avoidant behavior. I notice that too. When I feel like I'm in a box or I can't escape, like I will run for the hills.
Oh, I just try to do that. I just try to do that. I was like, what am I doing?
I know, right?
Why am I leaving?
It's okay.
And then I had to face the reality of that.
Yeah.
Another death. And I had this death 2 weeks ago. This avoidant, unsafe child, Letitia. I call her Little Tisha.
Yes.
You should always name your inner child. I call her Little Tisha.
Yes.
I said, Little Tisha.
Crystal ball.
Yeah. You're safe.
Yes.
He's not here to hurt you.
No.
He's not here to make you feel less than. He's here to expand you and to love you. And he's done that through his actions.
Yes.
You're scared because something is not aligning. There's a safe space for you to discuss this and create the space you want. You're used to a certain way, but that's no longer you.
Yeah, and isn't it crazy?
Missing that.
Yeah, isn't it crazy too? As you're healing, and then you are attracting more healthier relationships.
Yes.
The difference in that can feel very boring and humdrum and like, what's wrong? Because you're used to the chaos, you're used to the disrespect, you're used to the someone not valuing, you're used to the cheating, the lying, taking advantage of. And then you get to a place where you're not experiencing that anymore. And you're like, whoa, the shore is quite like crickets.
And I feel like that was the biggest death that I've experienced this year.
Yeah.
Allowing peace to be my stability instead of boredom.
Exactly.
Having a healthy relationship doesn't mean chaos and the thrill of emotional highs and lows. I used to start fights just to feel something.
Yes, exactly.
And he would always be like, I think you want to fight. You want to fight. And I'm like, no, I don't. But
yeah,
I did. I wanted to feel something.
Yes.
But that was me.
Yeah.
And that was part of me that I'm still healing.
And he was reflecting where you needed to grow. He was reflecting. And that's the thing. Relationships can be such beautiful mirrors because it can reflect your light.
Yes.
And it also can reflect where you need to grow. And if you are able, emotionally intelligent enough or mature enough to sit in the space of self-reflection and accountability, and you have a partner that can hold the space for you to heal, hold the space for you to give you grace on where you are not healed and where you are still working on yourself, then that's gold.
And that's beautiful.
That's just gold.
And you have to have patience for that journey for the both of you. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough in relationships. The patience of what it takes to build a relationship and allowing you to go through what you need to go through, allowing me to go through what I need to go through.
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
No.
And it takes time.
It takes time. And again, like the more that you become an observer,
Yes.
like that's the biggest thing I've learned lately. Now when I'm like, I say this, like my deaths are like a roller coaster, right? And I just hold on for the ride, right? And I'm going up and I'm going down, but I'm like holding on for dear life. But now, like the recent death that I had, well, I want to say this. I had a beautiful rebirth this year. And normally my rebirths would last like a couple months.
What's a rebirth to you? Define a rebirth.
Rebirth is when I come out on the other side, when I'm full bloom into my butterfly state. And I'm just flying into this new timeline, new version, new experiences. Like I moved to Bali for the summer, last summer, and I was in my rebirth season, and it was the most beautiful. Like I was the happiest I've ever been in my life because I felt like I was living in pure authenticity and pure joy, pure in my heart. Like getting to a place of healing where you're living a heart-centered life, and that takes a lot to live through your heart constantly.
I know.
I've been in my heart now for a couple of years, and it's a very vulnerable place to be. But it also like you know, the heart knows. The heart is the bridge to your own personal heaven on earth, baby. Like if you want to experience heaven on earth, you got to live in your heart. But if your heart is closed,
you're going to be living up here.
You're going to be living here. You're going to be living your ego. You're going to be living in survival mode. You won't be thriving. You won't be making decisions and choices from a place of expansion and heart energy. The heart is pure.
And I want to talk about this because a lot of our sisters that are listening right now, it's taken a while for us to get here. And I want you to understand that this wasn't a quick fix overnight. I'm 35 years old. This is taking me a long time.
Yes.
I don't even want to say a long time because I'm still young and fresh. But it's been a journey.
Yeah.
It has been easy. So like when she says that she's living in her heart now, know that it's been a journey.
Oh, it's been
for her to get here.
It's been all of my life. I started living in my heart in 2021.
Yeah.
So, and it felt very uncomfortable when I first got there. I was like, oh, when I first had my heart opening, my heart chakra opening, I was at a concert. I remember they were playing live instruments, and it was the strings, the violins. They started playing the violins, and the violins literally opened my heart, and I started sobbing. It was like my heart left my body.
That's beautiful.
And it was such a beautiful feeling that I had never experienced before. Because mind you, I had been in survival mode all my life. I had been in an energy of mistrust. I had deep mistrust issues.
I do too.
Trust issues where even when I thought I healed them, they were still lying in the shadows, waiting, right? Or like when you have these trust issues sitting in your subconsciously, you recreate scenarios to mistrust to live. And so I was still like, I mean, I remember one time someone did something that really I felt like betrayed me, and I kept waiting for them to tell me, like to fess up, like they're gonna tell me, they're gonna like we're too close, they're gonna tell me, but in my head I was like, no, I'm gonna see how long it takes her to tell me. I'm gonna see if I can really trust her.
So now you're putting it as a challenge.
Yes. And now I am creating more mistrust.
You see?
Yes.
You see what our ego can do to you?
Yes.
Why? In that moment, she was not living in her heart. She said, let me test this girl.
Yeah.
Let me see what she
I'm
wants.
like,
and that came out of you. Yeah.
Waiting.
Yes.
Waiting. It was like waiting. So you know what I stopped doing? I stopped waiting. Like, that's one lesson that I learned recently coming out of this last rebirth that I've had, this last death. This last death was me. I stopped waiting. So number one, I've graduated in my death process where I am an observer now.
Yep.
But also when these like tower moments, these super challenging moments appear, y'all gonna laugh, but I laugh at them. And I say, okay, what you got? Bring it on. Because I see it now. Like, all of this is just an illusion. And I know that sounds like super woo.
Time out. Okay, so she's telling me that when she's going through it, when you going through the hardest times of your life, when you in that dark, when you feel like you in the mud, you getting up and laughing.
I'm laughing. I'm transmuting that energy. I'm laughing. I'm crying. I'm laughing. I'm crying. I'm dancing. I am moving it through my body somatically.
That's the power.
Yes.
That's the power.
And I'm like, this doesn't own me. This is an illusion. This is temporary. This is just to teach me a lesson.
Yes.
And once I realize that and I say, bring it on, what you got, give me what you got. You got any more? And I know that this is going to be over shortly. I know that this is temporary. Like, that's the thing. If you can be in it and realize, like, this is going to be over.
Bring it on.
This is going to be over.
Bring it on.
Bring it on.